Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
I'm Gumshoe Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about A Murder at the End of the World, Episode 5. This episode was called Crypt.
Not Tales from the Crypt, just Crypt.
Just straight up Crypt. And Tom, as I'm going in my mind movie to rewatch this other person's mind movie, I felt like this episode was middling. It's almost like the mid-episode of a show. I don't know. I feel like we got some reviews, but this one was not my favorite.
Yeah, they had, again, I think the character choices are kind of goofy. We get Darby being Darby and just immediately regurgitating everything she learns to the next character she sees, which I don't
can't
love.
stop herself. Cannot stop herself.
There's some goofy character decisions. I mean, we had that little bit where Andy and Darby are able to interrogate and talk to some of the other people, but I don't love the way they're introducing all these other characters because I don't see anybody as really suspicious because they're not doing it from their perspective or giving us any more backstory on the other characters. So
Sure.
I'm kind of with you. And it was long. It was like an hour 15 or something like that.
Oof.
I don't think it needed to be. It was definitely slower.
Yeah, and when we podcast, we all know you take the episode time and you times it by 3, and that's how long we record. So
Generally.
buckle up, folks. But let's dive into it. Tom, I was pretty proud of us that we caught this detail, that the sneezing between Zoomer and Bill, there was a correlation. Mm-hmm. And I did appreciate how Zoomer was like, why are you being weird? She was being weird, Zoomer. That is
the
really
hug,
good
the
point.
sniff, like right into his hair. And I get the idea of like she smells him and then has like a sense memory, but this kid doesn't use the same shampoo as Bill did. It's kind of goofy.
I mean, I don't think Bill in the past times was doing a lot of shampooing. I mean, those bangs and these two, they look like they've just been on the road a lot. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I didn't even make the connection with the way that she smells Zoomer with the flashback we then enter with them at a gas station, just like aggressively smelling each other. I don't know if you go on a road trip for like 8 hours and when you get out of the car, you're just like, I need a shower and I need it now. There's something about sitting in a car, like just driving that, sorry. I didn't find this romantic. I was like, go, gasoline shower, I think it's called, or gasoline fight. What is it when you spray each other with gasoline?
In a tragic gasoline fight accident,
Right.
or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I like what they're doing with them kind of like falling in love here, or they're just kind of having this fun little banter. They're kind of giving themselves like coy smiles back at each other. So you can kind of see them falling in love here.
Okay, Tom, explain this to me because as you know, I'm just not the guy to understand these types of things. There's a forest fire, and they're like, Bill says something like, one day there won't be any place to go, because she's like, oh, we should leave. They're just watching this hill on fire. I was like, well, is global warming, like, attacking them, following them? What was Bill's comment? Explain this to me, please, in detail.
It was like the fact that she sees it when this is a relatively large wildfire in the background. One would argue they would have seen it from the road or a lot sooner.
Or smelt it, but they're too busy smelling each other.
Yeah. You smell like a burnt pine tree.
You smell like global warming, if I'm being honest right now.
I mean, I feel like, again, like I hate to always use that word of heavy-handed, but they're trying to throw in the idea of climate change into the storyline and giving Bill a little one-liner here, but it's a bit aggressive.
Okay, so here's my issue then, because I felt like the whole climate change summit that they were doing was like a kind of a bit to get a bunch of rich people or like famous people in this resort or in the facility. But now I'm starting to feel like last episode they were like, Andy thinks we don't have even that long. Andy thinks we've got like a year until the world collapses. And then this one where the forest fire is chasing down these two kids. I think heavy-handed is a good term. I don't think you're wrong in using that. But
we still don't really understand Andy's, I guess, motivation for bringing these specific people. And I think later when they're around the fire, they kind of talk about why they're here. And I don't know, maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. But it's still unclear even 5 episodes in.
Right. I don't understand it. And actually, Tom, give me a second. I've got to stoke the fire in this room. I'm burning some rubber tires to heat my office while I record. So one moment. All right, we're in the present, and Ava visits Darby, and Darby is like, "Hey, look at all this morphine," and that has a connection. Did the morphine come from this safe? Yes, it came from this safe. Did the pacemaker come from this? Yes, it did. Who was in this room? We don't know.
I don't know.
You're just like, okay, well, good detective work, Darby. All the rest of you are dum-dums, or I don't know if they're all in on it. That's what you...
The way Ava kind of like looks or responds to Darby, like inquiring about who's been in here or what's going on in this place, like she seems to hesitate. She seems to answer, I don't know, not necessarily truthfully. So I don't know if Ava's really up to something, but she doesn't seem to be telling the full story here.
Maybe it's a weird couple thing where her husband Todd murders everyone and she tries to bring him back to life, and sometimes she wins, sometimes he wins, and it's a fun little couple game they play back and forth. I don't know. We've got some arguing between Ava and Darby. Ultimately, this leads to Darby and Ava getting in an elevator and the Darba initiative, whatever it was called from Lost, and they go into negative floor 10. Is that I've been at a below ground. I've never seen the minus sign on a floor. I'm
kind of surprised I didn't put this together because we saw the robots building some other silo or underground thing a while back, and it has the same shape as this quote unquote hotel that they're in. And the assumption is that they're building the exact same thing. They just haven't built the top layer of whatever else those robots are building. So it does make sense that they are kind of living in this silo hotel here.
Sure. For some reason, I thought you had made that connection. Maybe you just brought up the silo building that the robots were doing.
Well, because they do that thing where once they get everybody to the quote-unquote safe room, there's just big circular round table thing with lights and fancy stuff. So we didn't really know where that was. I speculated that was this other robot building silo, but I guess it was where they currently are.
Oh, you mean you don't think it's in Camelot, Tom, where the round table resides? Because... Andy wants to read him about King Arthur. By the way, Clive Owen played King Arthur in a movie.
So good.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say Bill is Lancelot, who has an affair with Guinevere being Lee. This is all a King Arthur allegory. What the lesson is, I don't know. I think it ends well for all of them, but this is just... This King Arthur tilting at windmills in order to beat climate change with all of these famous people. But they interrupt dinner, and I apologize. The more I've watched the show and the more they've brought up King Arthur, the more I've thought of the legends and this show and whether or not they're trying to do some sort of correlation. In fact, I Googled it, and there are Reddit threads that talk about it. Did I read those Reddit threads? No, I did not, because I'm neither you nor Darby, and therefore I will not engage. I only go on Reddit for political stuff.
Of course. I mean, do you think it's just tongue-in-cheek, them mentioning King Arthur? He even mentions about, I want my son to be King Arthur and not read about King Arthur, and I guess Zoomer's, very upset about having to read a book, I guess, so he's not a big reader.
Zoomer doesn't want to go to bed, I believe, is what this fight is. And you have this moment where Lee's kind of coddling and Andy's like, kids are also spoiled. I'd slap him around with a gauntlet and teach him how to fight with a lance. And I was like, bro, your King Arthur movie wasn't that good, so settle down. Although it does have Keira Knightley in it doing some cool archery stuff. She was Legolas before Legolas. Anyways, you mentioned earlier where Darby cannot help herself. She immediately is like Andy or Sire, King Arthur. Zoomer is Bill's son. Do you know how weird that conversation would be? Can you imagine trying to tell someone that, not knowing that they knew, or maybe knowing that they knew, and it leading to murder? It's a really strange thing to just be like, hey, I know Zoomer's not your kid, and you killed Bill for it. And they're in some weird, below ground dungeon all alone. I don't know. This doesn't seem like... I mean, Andy then kills Darby, and show ends. I don't know. This was...
she doesn't, I mean, that's what I don't love about her character. She just doesn't think, like, she's very smart and does a lot of brilliant things, but she doesn't seemingly think more than one or two steps ahead because, yeah, what is the upside? What happens here? Oh, yep, you're right. I did do this. I knew he was the father. Here you go. Take my hand, put me in handcuffs.
Is she under the illusion that everyone that's killed or done something like this is just wanting to be caught? That as soon as it's revealed to them that she knows, they're just, like you just said, they're going to be like, handcuffs, please, take me away.
Or maybe that's what happened in the Silver Doe killing. Like, we thought that he was at the top of the basement and shooting down on him, but actually, no, he just dropped his handcuffs. He was waiting to get cuffed.
Oh, okay, sure, that's good, that's good. Or the sound of the gunshot was not meant for them. I don't know. There's a number of different ways that could go.
Fair.
What's interesting is Andy's like, you got it all wrong. And she just goes for it, like, and then Andy's on her side. I don't know. There's... Because he's like, ultimately like, by the way, I'm sterile. I know that because of, I don't know, some sort of weird college ritual. Oh, no, he was trying to sell his, yes. And I don't know. I found all this. His reasoning was such that she was like, oh, you are innocent. Join my team. This was weird.
Yeah, they become friends. Like, this whole bit about him confiding in Darby about this and saying Lee doesn't know, and then when Darby kind of confronts Lee later, I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, I would assume that Lee would have known about this. He makes that comment about, like, oh, my illness would ruin the economy. I'm like, all right, man. Like, I get it. You're like a rich billionaire guy, but come on. Like, have a little bit of humility here.
No. When a king dies, we don't know who rules Camelot afterwards. It will be anarchy. It'll either be Bors or Lancelot or Boromir.
Dancelot.
Boromir or maybe Faramir. I don't know. Maybe I'm mixing metaphors. But what kind of illness do you think he has? Let's touch on that. Do you think he's slowly turning into like a vampire? Or what illness is he? Is this secretly a Mike Flanagan production, and he's going to turn into a monster?
Well, didn't they mention pretty quickly after this scene or a couple scenes forward that he's just trying to get some sort of, like, it's not necessarily an illness, it's more of a therapy to try to last and live longer?
Yeah, that's right. They do have a line that's almost, so I don't know if his illness is just aging.
He's regular
like,
old people.
He's
aging.
like, I've got something that I'm going to tell you that would ruin the economy if people knew. I'm getting older. One day I will probably die. Yeah, that's a good point, because he does say, oh, it's just like life-extending therapy. So, I don't
appreciate that at one point they're like going back and forth, and she, Andy's like mentioning how much he loves Zoomer and how like he is, for all intents and purposes, his father, which I think is a very fair statement.
Sure.
But he makes this line about like hardware versus software, and how Bill was the hardware and he's the software, and software matters most. I couldn't help but giggle.
Oh, yeah. When he said hardware and he winked into the camera, I was like, all right, pump the brakes there, friend. Yeah, so ultimately what we're supposed to know is Zoomer's not his. He knew it already. I guess Lee doesn't know. And like you mentioned, that conversation is interesting. But ultimately he was getting treatment with Ava during Bill's murder, so he can't be a part of it. And
he makes a fair point here in a bit about it. He's like clouded in his, or Darby's clouded in her thoughts because she thinks it's all about Bill, and then Andy's like, it's all about him. But I almost kind of think maybe they're playing at us a little bit, where Andy thinks it's all about him because he's just a rich, arrogant guy, but maybe it's not. I don't know. What's your take on that?
No, I think you've got a good point, because he says, you think it's all about Bill. It's not about Bill. It's about someone sabotaging me. And I think, like, some of the other stuff he said is probably true and right on, but I think, yes, to your point, that is, you could say the same thing about him. It's like, hey, you think it's about you, but it's not about you. Yeah. It's about Zoomer, the robot baby. And so, I don't know, but I think you make a great point. They are trying to end King Andy. is all What a name, King Andy. Can you imagine if you are of the line of King Andy the Second? They'll call you. Yeah, that's just a bad king
Prince
name.
Zoomer.
Prince Zoomer's worse.
Listen, Zoomer is chasing around that crown throughout the house.
That is true. That is true. So they're like, let's team up, and then there's a montage where they like get dressed together and they put on like uniforms that match, and they go shopping, and then they come back and they're a team.
Yeah.
This all leads to this weird 3D scan of everything that's happening, and I was like, oh, all the actors went on strike and they hired a video game company to just show everyone. Why is this 3D scan better than just security camera footage? Why do I have to look at this weird N64 graphic world? What's going on here?
Yeah, it's just trying to show cool newer technologies. Like it's a LiDAR security system that uses, I don't know, lights, radar, whatever. I think it is in some form or fashion real, but not to this extent. I'm for it. I think it's a fun just TV-ism or whatever to show new technology, but it definitely reminded me of like your point, N64 GoldenEye. The way once they zoomed in, the characters are a little bit like squared off and everything. But there is an interesting point here where they're doing this team up. They're both talking to Ray to try to like go through this security system. She asks Ray to do something. Ray doesn't do it. And Andy asks Ray to do something, and he does it right away. And I don't think that's necessarily a surprise, but I think they did that on purpose to kind of show us that, again, Ray is kind of fully controlled by Andy.
Well, was it, and I remember what you're talking about. I don't remember exactly what she said, but was it another time where she used like a colloquialism or something that wasn't literal, and then Andy had to adjust it to make it more literal?
Andy said the exact same thing. It was just
really?
Like security protocols kind of thing. She was trying to eliminate the people that were in their rooms. When she said it, he wouldn't do it.
Right. She's like, eliminate all the people in their rooms, and then Ray killed everyone else, and we're like, I think we know who the murderer is. It's AI and global warming. Boom. Credits. Brought to you by Dick Wolf. Dun dun. I think this is then the conversation about the treatment, which is life extension therapy. Guess what, Andy? We're all dying. We're all dying slowly or quickly, one way or another. Yeah. The last thing I'll say about the LiDAR security system, the 3D system, is it's kind of like getting an ultrasound, and they do the 3D ultrasound, and you're like, no, thank you. I do not want whatever that is that you've shown me a picture of. I don't know.
It's trippy. It's wild.
You know what? I think we've seen them. I don't think we ever got any because
we didn't do it for our kid. No.
Yeah. Terrifying. Anyways. Life is such a gift. All right. We have some sort of 11:59 auto backup, which of course means that was an
classic,
insider, right?
Yeah. It's just, like there has to be a specific time. Like with all the technology, you tell me there's no redundancy that the system like has to be offline for 1 minute every night. Like, come on, it's a bit silly.
There's
like another thing. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's like my boss knows whenever my computer's updating, and he calls me and he's like, "What are you doing right now?" And I'm like, "Oh, my computer's updating." And then he's like, "Demerit, you're not working." And
he's watching your front-facing camera.
Yeah, that's joke's on him. I have a sticker on front of it. Joke's on him. I don't wear a shirt at work. Joke's on him. I didn't have a third one, but you can, Jimmy, use any of those. Just cut in the funniest one, please.
Will do.
Thanks, Jimmy.
There's a note where Andy says something about like, oh yeah, and the person had access to the pacemaker and to Sean's suit. I'm like, wait, what? Like, who had access to Sean's suit? Like, they're trying to make Sean's thing with her helmet getting stuck to be like sabotage, but I'm not buying that, right? Like, they made a point of like focusing on the helmets when they both put them in the back of the Volvo. Like maybe she took the wrong helmet and maybe she took Darby's helmet and put that back on, and that's why it got stuck. But they threw this line out there like the pacemaker got sabotaged just like her suit did. And I was like, I don't buy that.
Well, I do think in the scene where they're trying to get the helmet off, when he goes to like plug it in and do some hacking. Oh man, Tom. All right. Straight-faced Julian. This is a serious show where serious
So
people
they hacked it shut, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I got the sense, and I thought during that conversation that someone very clearly was like, her helmet was hacked. And so this, to me, was not a surprise. Is it incredible that they hacked, I don't know, the rubber that is at the bottom of a helmet that can be peeled away? Yeah, maybe, but I'm not a hacker, Tom. I think we've established that. So
We have.
but yes, this is him pointing out that everything was done by an insider, which in terms of insiders at this point, aren't we like, it's Lee and Andy? Aren't those our suspects? Are we looking at anyone else possibly based on what you've seen so far?
I mean, they're trying to throw like this whole like footage thing leads us to David, and like this is the first time you've ever had like extensive screen time for him. So they're trying to kind of throw him under the bus a little bit, and then I'll just kind of go through it. I guess they talk to David, they do a little interview, and realize he's having some romantic relationship with Oliver. Then brings Oliver in for questioning, and then I think they eventually get to Lou Mai for questioning. So like again, I feel like it's just too late in this show, 5 episodes in, to then start bringing in these characters, questioning them to make them think like these people are suspects. Because I don't buy it. I feel like it has to be Lee at this point.
Sure. I don't think it's right to yada yada over the greatest love story in this show, which is Oliver and David. I think those crazy kids are going to make it. There is also a moment where David mentions that Lou Mai might be a spy, which I felt was him grasping at straws a little bit and maybe slightly racist. I don't know. It just seemed wrong the way he casually threw that out
David
there.
seems like he might be casually racist.
Or overtly. I don't know. There is a moment where Darby talking with Oliver notices some details.
Yeah, I like that bit where she notices his shoes and that they're worn, but he's like, and I don't know if I really clocked this earlier, that he is in a wheelchair.
Is it bad that in episode 5 we were surprised by that? Because I felt the same
show
way.
The character, yeah, like he was at dinner that one time, and it might have mentioned it briefly, but I mean they haven't done much with him. And I guess what Darby figures out here is that he's not fully paralyzed. He can walk. He can't get out of his chair. So again, I don't know if that's just the show trying to say, oh, okay, he can get out of his chair. He can still be a suspect. Like if they're just doing that for the sake of trying to give us another suspect, or I'm not sure what we're supposed to take from it. Yeah, I thought we might get something like when we see like the footprints of the kind of intruder kind of come into her room. I thought we might see the footprints of his shoes, but they kind of like fade in the snow quick enough, so I couldn't make that conclusion.
Yeah, I had the same thought that you had in terms of, I think what they're showing here is he's still possibly a suspect simply because he can sprint short distances. So I don't know. They interview Lou Mai, and there was apparently a poker game, and the only person that left during the poker game. When they're doing these interviews, Tom, all I thought was, if you asked me last night, like what minute I did what, I'd be like, I don't know. I was drinking. I have no idea what time anything happened. And so she's like, everyone else just hung out in the room. Lee's the only one that left. And apparently, I think Lee is a good poker player. So we're supposed to establish that Lee is good with a bluff, I'm assuming.
Yeah, or reading people, yeah.
What would have been funny, and once again, this is a different show. This is the comedy I want this show to be, is if Darby, instead of like focusing on the murder during this, really lost sight of it and was like, why wasn't I invited to the game of poker that everyone else was attending? And seemed to be, you guys, there's like all these screenshots of everyone just like having a great time, like backslapping, drinking, just high-fiving. And she's like, why wasn't I? And this is where they're like, listen, you are a downer and no one likes to hang out with you. So
listen, if they were playing with like butt sniffer money, I don't know if Darby could afford it.
Butt sniffer money. Drink. All right. I love it.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Lume has to admit here that she hacked the firewall. And what I thought was funny is I think she offers this up. Like, she thinks they're accusing her of this, and she kind of gives it up. And Andy goes, well, thank you for that. Like, the way he says it was, like, so, like, disappointed in his firewall for being hacked, and also, like, thanks for admitting your wrongdoing. I don't know. It was just a very funny delivery from Clive Owen.
I agree. The way she's like trying to sell her helping is like, oh, I could run these algorithms and profile everybody so you don't have anybody that could potentially murder other people, I guess is what she's saying. Like, that doesn't sound like a fantastic city to live in, regardless of how smart it is. It's like Minority Report style, right? Like pre-crime.
Right. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like, Tom, she might be a spy working for someone else. You know what? I think David might have a point. I think there's certain individuals that might look guilty based on certain things. And, that didn't feel right. All right. There was a call between David and Bill that lasted 27 seconds. 27 seconds. Does that seem like a long call, a short call, or a call that should have been a text message? Tom, I asked the question.
Every call should have been a text message.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I don't know. Sometimes some stuff gets lost in text message. I'm still a big phone call guy. I don't know. It's nice.
Good on you.
But 27 seconds is way too long. All right. This was great. Sir, you need to take this phone call. It's the Wall Street Journal, and they know everything. And Clive Owen, in his contract, was like, listen, I'll do your dumb show, but at one point, you're going to let me just, like, overact the poop out of all of this, and I'm going to yell. And they're like, all right. And he's like, I'm going to pick the moment. And guess what? He picked this moment where he was like, can I not trust anyone? I don't know. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, justifiably angry, right? It's not the New York Times it's calling. It's the Wall Street Journal. Ugh.
Oh, I
That's why he
misinterpreted
was
his
mad.
anger. I thought he was upset that he couldn't trust anyone. You're saying he was upset that it was the wrong... It was the wrong print media that is super important to this billionaire that probably bought the, a murder at the end of the world equivalent of Twitter at some point.
Well, you didn't hear the Butler guy. It's like when he said, like, hey, the Wall Street Journal's calling, print edition. Like, he kind of said it under his breath.
He's like
All the
Sheboygan.
other guys.
He's like Sheboygan Falls. Press is calling. They're doing their quarterly newsletter, and they found out about this. They need to talk to you. And he's like, Sheboygan Falls, not again. I want to say Sheboygan Falls is near a little town where they manufacture Lionel Cougans. Lionel Cougans. If you're looking for a smooth taste with a sweet finish, try Lionel Cougans Winter Shandy. It's cocoa and beer mixed together. Lionel Cougans.
I don't know if that's right.
It's what Tom and I drink. Anyways, all right, sorry. Back to the show. When this started happening, I got confused in my own home, and I was like, where's that sound coming from? Because I live in a world where whales don't necessarily roam, but other animals roam, and calls can happen at all hours of the night. And these whale recordings really threw me off in Zoomer and Lee's sleeping quarters.
You watch with subtitles on, right?
I do.
I feel like when I was watching with subtitles on before, I heard the same thing. Like, what are these noises? And it says like wailing getting louder, but I think it spelled it like WAILLING. So like,
morning,
ooh, interesting. And then it gets closer, and it's literally whales wailing. I thought that was great.
That's great. That's great. Oh, all right. This conversation's important, so let's straight face this one. Here we go.
Put our poker faces on.
Lee, why did you leave the poker game? And she's like, I went to check on Zoomer.
Lie.
Really? It's a lie? You think that's a lie? Why do you think that's a lie?
because she's just not trustworthy. Like, especially what happens in the rest of the scene. Like, I feel like everything she's saying is a lie. Like, Darby has a blind for Lee because of, the affinity for her as a hacker,
Sure.
Or activist, whatever it was. So I think she was up to something suspicious.
Okay. You don't think this is just the common parent of a small child thing where your excuse is always, listen, I'd love to come to your timeshare presentation, but my kid, I got to check in on the kid. So you can get
the kid was charging in his room. He was fine.
He was plugged in. She's like, wrong. Zoomer was plugged into the wall. We have all right. So Darby, very quickly, just not a good poker player. Lee, good poker player. Darby, bad poker player. Darby's like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but your husband and the person that you have a child with, small detail, he's sterile, and Zoomer is not his. And Lee seems very distraught by this. And as distraught people do, she quickly throws up, which between the wailing and the throwing up, it was a lot of noises.
throwing up, I love it. Yeah, I mean, again, I just don't understand Darby here. Like, is your blinder still on where she just trusts Lee enough to throw all this out? Or is this like, you should be hearing this from me? Like, she should be hearing it from Andy. Like, I don't understand her motivation. And then we get the whole bit about, Lee having a wig in her bag, and which I think a wig is kind of odd to be carrying around in your bag at all times. But then this ID of under Marie Larson. And again, they're just throwing it down heavy that she's a suspect and she's super suspicious here. But I don't know, is this like her second life that she created after being doxxed? I don't. Is this like her go bag that she's going to take Zoomer away from this place? What's going on?
Tom, I don't know. I feel like, and maybe I'm just misremembering this, but someone I was watching this show with, she said that the wig had bad bangs too, like had a front cut bang, and so maybe was trying to look a little bit like Darby. So my assumption is that Bill still loves Darby, but being with Lee, they're doing a little role play where Lee looks like Darby and goes by a very similar name, Marie Larson. So that is
my wife did make a mention about like wigs and bangs and how a lot of wigs in like movies and TV shows have bangs because it's easier to hide that kind of a wig and make it look more realistic. So maybe that's what they're doing here.
Interesting. A little show business inside baseball from your spouse, which we always appreciate. Thank you. All right. All I wrote in the outline is Lee seems bad, Andy seems bad. I think I had gotten to a point in this episode, so I don't know why Darby trusts any of these people with facts. I feel like it's the way Lee reacts to all of this is very strange, right?
She comes in hot, very, very hot. Like Andy almost seems to save her in this moment.
Right. So we're escorted out by Todd, Ava's husband. Todd, her the doctor, him the security guy. He murders, she saves. It's what they call the circle of life. The Lion King was all about it. Go watch it, kids. Todd tells a terrible story about a dead brother and revenge, which I don't know. This is like us being like, oh yeah, revenge is good, which Revenge was an ABC show that Tom and I potted all 8 seasons about. You guys can listen to that in our back catalog. Tom's quoted as saying if he was on a desert island, he would pick Revenge 3 times as the TV show he would take with him.
This is false.
But
I mean, like, all of this is to get us, like, when Todd first starts talking to her and he's like says, hey, I'm sorry about this. I'm like, oh, cool. We're going to get some backstory in Todd. He's going to be a more redeemable character. But no, it's just him giving the super weird story, saying that he's loyal, like he loves loyalty, but he's loyal to this family and apparently will do any and everything for them. Which, I mean, I get, like, a security guard for a billionaire. You probably do want and need that, but I was kind of hoping they give more dimension to Todd.
Sure. Well, his name is Todd, so I don't know that there are more dimensions to Todd's.
Apologies to all of our Todd listeners.
No apologies. I'm surprised Darby is not like, hey, Have you ever thought about changing your name and not being a Todd? Or, I don't know. There's a lot of things that Darby could have said in this moment. Todd gives her a ring. Darby says yes. Ava's going to be super disappointed because it sounds like Todd and Darby are getting married. Ring, ring, ring. Ring those wedding bells. So, Darby takes some, I'm going to say they're like Smarties, which I've only eaten Smarties. I've never snorted them through my nose. But Darby, we know that Bill had some addiction issues. Have we established Darby does not have any? Or does that kind of come through in this maybe a bit of a like obsessive nature? Because Bill brings up some stuff later in the episode, but we haven't established that she has. I don't know. Why is she snorting Smarties through her nose, Tom?
Yeah, this was triggering for me due to my past lightning
Tom,
writing.
I'm so sorry. I should have given you some sort of spoiler alert or trigger warning before I started talking about Darby chasing the white dragon.
Well, this is the orange dragon, so it wasn't as bad.
Oh, the orange flavored Smarties. That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, like they hinted at her drinking in previous episodes. They certainly hit at her drinking and then doing like Adderall or other uppers, downers later in this one. So yeah, I mean, she clearly has some sort of like addiction problems, but I don't know what her thought process is here. Like, I think she's just overwhelmed. She's like concussed, right? So she's seeing multiple things. She's, we get her perspective. So I think she's just, she's trying to level herself out. Yeah.
Sure. Maybe, I mean, she's a hacker. This is a life hack. I mean, I think I recently watched a YouTube video. It was like life hack, how to not sleep. And this was one of them. So
biohacking.
Biohacking, yeah. How to circumvent sleep and live forever. And, all right. So she, after getting high, calls David. And once again, no preamble. It's just like, why did Bill call you the night that he died? So we're letting David know, hey, we know you guys talked. I'm giving you some information that you didn't know I had.
David even makes this comment like, you sound high. Are you high right now? I'm like, come on. Like, she said nothing on this phone call yet. I don't get that.
Oh, Tom, I don't know about you. Well, you only get text messages, and so maybe you constantly respond with, you sound like you're texting high. But every phone call I'm on, I make a point of being, are you high right now? Which really confuses the census people when they ask me how I'm voting. But Tomas shows up at the door. He offers food. She, even though high, will not leave the door open for the munchies. She says, do you have anything in a vacuum-sealed bag? Please leave it outside my door. She's like, do you have any Funyuns? Do you have any extreme nacho-flavored Doritos? Do you have any Royals? Twisted pretzels. Do you have any Pirates Booty? And we're brought to you by Pirates Booty, that large 4-gallon bag. That, oh man, Pirates Booty's so good. It's a snack, folks. Anyways, they leave it at the door, and then she gets tackled by someone using a robot voice.
So, like, before Tomas comes to the door, she kind of hears like a bang, which like makes her head towards the door. I mean, the door never opened because we have the like nightstand in front of it. Like, how does this person get in here? Like, is this just a TV show thing? They want them to be in here?
They all have a door to the outside. So there's also a door that leads to the snow because people are constantly coming in through the snow, right?
Okay, so I guess that's why. That's what they got in.
So there is also maybe the person was already in the room. I don't know. There's probably air vents. This looks like a 007 facility that Bond would sneak into in order to get some sort of microchip. So, yeah, I didn't, getting this, I mean, Bill proved he could get into hotel rooms. I don't know. Doesn't seem that hard.
I just figured it wouldn't open from the outside there, but again, that's fine. Like,
maybe the robot voice person has a ring that opens everything. Who knows?
Sure.
Maybe they have the one ring.
Key.
Yeah, exactly. The skeleton
we know it's out
key.
there.
Yeah.
It exists.
Tom, you were a part of the skeletons, that fraternity that all the presidents were a part of. Are you allowed to talk about the skeleton key?
I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of a skeleton or a key.
Oh, maybe that
I don't
was
even use
called
keys from my house.
Maybe it was called the skulls, the crystal skulls. I think it was called. Anyways,
oh, wow.
All right. The voice says, "Don't force my hand. I don't want to take another life. And as they were talking through their digital phone, Google Translate, we'll call it, I was like, oh, you know who doesn't have a voice right now is Sean. So maybe this is Sean attacking her in her room. But then they kill Sean shortly after. So I was like, oh, probably not Sean. Sean doesn't seem all that lively in this moment. So I don't think she's tackling people. But
no.
Do you have thoughts? I mean, could this be David? Is this Andy? Is this Lee? Is this probably Lee? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I don't know what to make of this. Like, if this person really wants them out of the picture, then just take care of her, right? Like, as they've been trying to do with a bunch of other people here. I don't know why they're trying to spare Darby unless it's somebody that maybe isn't the killer, but like knows what's going on and is like pretending to be the killer or something, and just trying to tell her like, hey, like if you keep going down this road, the guy's gonna get you, whoever this main person is. Like, sure. I don't know what to make of it.
All right, my theory is this is Bill. That's my ultimate theory.
Okay, from the grave. Bill. Love it.
From the grave. All right, speaking of Bill, we have a flashback, and Bill's like, hey girl, as we're driving around, I don't know, Arizona, Sedona, somewhere in the Southwest based on the landscape, even though we're from the Midwest, Iowa and Ohio, respectively. Why'd you fall for me? And Bill's like, I'll tell you the 3 reasons why I fell for you. Here's my heart. I'm putting it in your hands. Mm-hmm. And Darby, who is one of the most loving people in the world, is like, who says I fell for you? And then she crushes Bill's heart in her hands, and it was cold-blooded. It was cold-blooded and warm country, Tom. That's. And then Bill pops on a log. So harsh. So harsh. I'm starting to like Bill more and Darby less. That's what these flashbacks are doing.
The way he just pulls over the car, doesn't say anything, and just walks out and then just sits on a log. It's great. Great passive aggressiveness.
You've never pulled the car over on a family road trip and gone and sat on a log while you collected yourself before you murdered every single person in the car? You have more patience than I do. This all leads to Bill complaining about phones and technology. I thought that was strange. I was like, no. You expressed your feelings and she shot you down. I don't think phones have anything to do with this. What's going on here?
Phones are the real evil. That's the artificial insanity, bro.
Listen, I thought you were being silly until you said bro at the end, and then you nailed me. I was like, Tom's right. He's got a great point.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I like some of the writing. It does seem a little bit out of hand and unnecessary here, but I think it's just to do this line saying, like, well, Darby fell in love with him on her phone. So it's just, I guess, juxtaposing those two ideas. Like, he thinks phones are ruining us, and she's using it to kind of fall in love. But I like the general concept of how, and you talked about like what people smoking in a movie theater, they thought that was bad. We look back at it, it's like, it seems crazy. But the idea that everybody just has these phones and it's just kind of sucking away our life, I think there's certainly some truth to that.
Oh, there's truth, buddy. There's truth. Because of the amount of time we have to spend with our hands holding them. Hopefully they put the phone in front of our eyeball with one of those screens. That way we can stare at it, but still use our hands, I don't know, to hold 2 more phones. So then we'll have a screen in front of one eye. We'll be driving with our non-dominant eye. And then in both hands, we'll have some sort of tablet phone that we can also be scrolling with. That's the world I'm looking forward to live in. This has been brought to you by Apple.
I like in your dystopian world, you're still driving the car with your non-dominant eye, and the car isn't driving itself.
Well, I'm using my knees. You'll notice that there is a phone in each hand. There's a screen over one eye. My left eye, my non-dominant, is looking at traffic, and then my right knee is steering. My left knee is covered in lithium batteries to run all of the equipment that I'm looking at different times.
I'm going to see somebody Photoshop this picture.
We can only hope so. One of our ones of listeners will definitely do that. All right. So let's leave the lovers and go back to the present where Darby visits Sean and they get 3 minutes alone. She tells Sean about Zoomer's parentage. Is that a term?
Yeah, for sure. Because, she hasn't told somebody. She's going to find somebody she hasn't told all her secrets to.
There's a scene that got left on the cutting room floor where Darby is walking through the hallway, runs into, 6 different hotel workers. She's like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but Zoomer's not Andy's biological kid. Oh, hey, excuse me, sir, while you're picking up that room service tray, Zoomer, turns out not Andy's biological kid. Oh, sir, yeah, can you put a couple more coffees in room 11? Oh, by the way, Zoomer.
Oh, did you sneeze? You know what? He has a syndrome called a chew.
Just everyone. Tells everyone. There's a weird moment where Sean is like, she brings up how Andy loves Zoomer, right? Andy loves Zoomer, and she's like, I don't know what Lee loves. So once again, I don't like how hard on episode 5 we're casting suspicion at Lee. That's what worries me about my original Lee is the bad guy theory, because we're now at 5. This is minute 43 of an episode of House, where he's like, it's sarcoidosis, and you're like, dude, there are, I don't know, 13 more minutes. There's no way it's sarcoidosis. So this is my fear with the Lee hate that's being shown when we don't know what Lee loves. And it's also mentioned that Zoomer is making millions a day because of his trust. I found that a strange comment, especially because at some point Andy says he's like, I'm leveraged to the hilt. So, I mean, why doesn't he just remove Zoomer's battery and take his trust? I found all this confusing.
Yeah, just money doesn't seem to be a big motivation. Like, if that's going to be the motive for Lee doing all these killings or whatever just for money, it just seems kind of silly because these people just have filthy money. But there's like this conversation where, Sean's trying to tell Darby, like, hey, you're powerless, don't blame yourself. I think like all of that's fair. But I feel like Sean tried to make a point like, we can't control any of this. We can't control the ice and the black ice. I'm like, well, you were driving pretty recklessly. I think you could have controlled it a little bit more.
Well, Tom, it's a Volvo. She was perfectly safe
she knew
the
she
whole
was
time. Yeah. Well, and she's not ultimately, she's not ultimately killed by the Volvo. She's killed by the helmet. So, I don't know.
No, she's killed by a lack of water.
That's fair. Oh,
dude,
yeah.
This sequence, I couldn't, man. Like, can you give me a glass of water? She goes over there, she starts talking to the mirror, and then like flatlines. I'm like, ugh, I just put my palm to my head. I was like, that's such a silly way to do this. It's like soap opera style.
Well, now when she comes back in, is Ava there? Like, does Ava come in afterwards?
I think they came in afterwards, but what could you have possibly done in that short amount of time for her to flatline?
Well, I felt like, and once again, I wasn't paying attention. I was on one of my 3 phones at the time, but I thought maybe they were implying that Ava had come in and ended her, and that's when Darby comes out of the bathroom. But I did feel like Darby, Darby was talking about something pretty mundane when Sean died, like. Darby's like, hey, did you know? She's like revealing all these secrets, and then you just hear the flat line, the wailing of the flat line in the background.
I kept thinking they were going to do something on the mirror, because I felt like there was like a smudge, like almost of blood or something on the mirror as Darby was filling up the water, but it never came to be anything.
Yeah, if she ran the hot water and the mirror steamed, like a secret message would form, and it would say, poop. Because that's what my kids do. When they...
I knew you were speaking from experience there.
Yes. Recently we went on a trip with our kids where a bathroom was shared, and one kid to the other was like, hey, come in here, you gotta see this. And yep, they had written poop on the mirror, and it steamed up. So, God bless children. We have Andy and Darby having another conversation where Darby's like, hey, guess what? Your wife... Guess what? Your wife, who had that kid that's not yours, she's got a passport with a funny name. And he's like, why are you always telling people stuff? Can you not keep a secret? You're the worst. I don't know.
I don't understand here, and I get that Andy's very upset because his close friend and Sean, like, died here. But, like, Andy and Darby were teaming up and trying to figure out what was going on. And now Andy is completely blowing her off and not taking her serious or just saying, like, go away, go back into your room.
Well,
I didn't understand this turn.
So the only thing I can mention is earlier when they're talking about who to interview, Darby's like, Lee, we should interview Lee. And Andy's like, no, Lee's fine. So, like, I don't know if the implication here is if Lee is involved, then also Andy is involved. And so every time it turns to Lee, he's trying to throw the trail off of her. I don't know. I mean, it could go either way. I don't know if Andy and Lee are competing or if they're on the same side. The show is, I feel like, trying to show that Andy, at least, is trying to spare Lee or at least not throw the suspicion towards her. So, but yeah, I thought the same thing. This all leads to a beautiful kumbaya around a campfire where...
No s'mores, though.
No s'mores. No, less s'more of s'mores. And Zeba is like, I'd like to sing you all a song. And they're like, no. You did that already. Yeah. The spirit on the wind. Yeah. You already did that song. They make some.
She pulls out her guitar. She's like trying to play it, but she can't quite play it right.
She's like, oh, this is a song by Weezer. And everyone's like, boo. Anyways, then she's like, I'm going to sing The Time of Our Lives by Green Day. And everyone's like, boo. Anyways, Sean's dead. And we find out that Sean loved life so much that she wouldn't kill a spider. And I thought, okay, when they mean spider, they mean large robot spiders, right? Sean wouldn't kill a robot spider? I don't know. I don't know why they told us this. Was it to show that Sean wasn't any part of the murdering? I don't know.
I like I don't know. I like the writing of this. I thought was cool. Like if you change your perspective and she goes all the way to the moon and you see like the vastness of the universe and how there's just nothing, no life. It's all just void of life. And then you have maybe a better understanding of how precious life is on planet Earth. I think that was cool and eloquently said, but it was just kind of haphazardly thrown into this conversation.
Sure. The conversation then turns to, is this a hotel or is it a super rich timeshare for rich people when the world ends? And I was like, okay. And I think VRBO watched this show and it was immediately like, can we explore this market? And they're like, yes, the cleaning fees are going to be $4,000 because we're terrible. Oliver joins them and he wheels himself over. Maybe he walks a little bit, but he certainly wheels himself over.
I feel like when he joins, like they are mid-conversation, and he comes right up to the circle and immediately butts in to exactly what they were talking about. I was like, man, you've been here for 3 seconds, and you're already chiming in about end of the world doomsday stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that might be a little bit of an editing issue, but it's a TV show-ism. Everyone gets to see Sean's spirit go to the heavens through the auroral borealis or something like that. Did I get it?
Yeah, aurora borealis.
Areolis borealis, I think it's called, which in scientific terms is nipple lights.
You just pay extra for that.
Let's name the dead. And I was just like, man, this is... How awkward would this be without alcohol? You know? That's yeah.
But yeah, Darby couldn't say Bill's name because she thought it would make it too final. Which
is crazy because it's Bill. Bill's not a hard name to say. Bill. Bill. I say it 1,000 times. I don't know why she had trouble with it. Billy? Anyways, we're back at a flashback. It was too... What? I'm making light of it, but she was too emotional to say his name, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And she was like, let's all remember Bill, who's the father of Zoomer. And they're like, what? And she's like, oh, I haven't told you guys already? I told everyone else. All right. We're at a flashback. She can't tell Bill why she loves him, but she can tell all these other people all these secrets. Maybe that's what she learned. She's like, she made a pact with herself. She's like, oh, I didn't tell Bill how I really felt. So the rest of my life, I'll say what's ever on my mind to everyone. Yeah. And she's living like Jim Carrey and Liar. She just can't keep it in.
It's Jim Carrey and Yes Man.
Yeah, Jim Carrey and Yes Man. Or Jim Carrey in Room 23, the other classic comedy where he keeps spouting things from his brain, or the eternal sunshine of a spotless mind, or in living color. Boom. There you go.
Oh, wow. Fire Marshal Bill.
Or The Mask.
Okay, moving on. This is already long enough.
No. Let's do Christopher Nolan movies. All right. We're in a flashback. Darby and Bill, they're back together. Is this the moment where he went to sleep and she's all hopped up on coffee and Coke and she's solved who the killer is? And Bill, rather than being intrigued by who the killer is more concerned about her mental well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she's clearly drinking and drugging here, and I like the way Bill reacts to this. He's kind of like, oh wow, yeah, this seems like a good lead, but he just realizes that this whole adventure is very bad for Darby, and she's just becoming so obsessed over it. It's leading her down a wrong path, and it's kind of like they found each other, and that seemingly just isn't enough for Darby. Right,
and it's a very emotional scene where she smushes a Starburst into a spoon, lights it with a lighter, and then snorts it. And he's like, where'd you learn to do that? And she's like, I learned it from you, Bill. I learned it from you. And if you mix orange and lemon, then they're actually not that bad, because separately they're terrible flavors. And so, also brought to you by Starburst, which is a Lionel Coogan's flavor. The Starburst Summer Shandy. All right. She's like, let's go visit a serial killer, which sounds like one of the worst ideas anyone's ever come up with. And Bill very quickly is like, this guy seems to be laying tracks for wanting someone to find him. And I was like, good point, Bill. Let's not visit the serial killer.
Yeah, this is the second mention I think we've had of this, where this guy wants to be caught, kind of a thing. And Bill has this very poignant line where he's like, I feel like I'd have to die for you to love me. Which is, very poignant to what happens kind of later on, and maybe she doesn't really realize what she has until Bill is gone. It's a tough line.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, she couldn't fully commit or kind of fall for this guy because she's too obsessed with these other bits. And I get it, right? She's very passionate about it, and she has all right to be, but it's leading her down a bad path.
So Bill read Romeo and Juliet and was like, the only way for her to truly love me is for me to kill myself. And that's what this is. This is just one big love story. Interesting. Okay. Darby starts a hotel fire, which I thought was very funny. Are we still in the same room that we snuck into and hijacked? We're in a different hotel at this point, right?
Yeah, they're still traveling. This is a new hotel.
This is a different hotel they set on fire.
This is the hotel, though, that is from the first episode, where they were. So we'll probably get something about the bathtub, because that was featured so heavily of Bill either being in the bathtub or something else going on there. That's got to come back here.
Sure. Tom, I know you played travel soccer. You spent a lot of time in hotels. I'm going to say over under the amount of hotel fires you started. I'm going to say 3. Am I, would there be a...
in the room, 1. Okay. Outside of the room,
okay,
probably also 1. Okay. But there were fireworks, and it was dry. There's nothing you could do about it.
Sure. Are you counting friction burns? Anyways, boom! All right, let's go to the present, where Ray is a projection. And I wrote something about Darby being like, everything hurts, life's like a Brillo pad. What's happening here? I think I was maybe dozing off. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. This one really kind of dragged.
Well, at this bit, I think clearly Darby is just she's almost suicidal here. She's saying, I just want to go to sleep. I don't want to wake up. It's incredibly sad. And she's, gives this analogy of life being like a Brillo pad. And it's just slowly taking layers off your life until it's too late. It's just, it was hurtful and difficult to listen to. But the way that Ray is kind of talking to her and saying hey, Ray even mentions hey, I am a good listener. It is interesting to think about AI therapy being, because that's something that I think is in the news and stuff nowadays, with it becoming more prevalent. And a lot of people just need somebody to talk to, but obviously AI is not where it needs to be. And I think there's been stories of AI leading people down the wrong paths. But I think it can be therapeutic in some form or fashion, just to be able to say these things and have something respond and listen to you if you don't trust or believe in actual therapy. But again, if you're having thoughts of this stuff, see a therapist. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a good thing.
Sure. No, I agree. See a robot therapist. They'll tell you exactly what you want to hear, and also they'll be able to order you a cup of coffee or run a warm bath.
That's all they're good for.
That's all they're good for. No, those good points, and this all leads to this flickering lamp, which Darby, I think this is supposed to show that she's still coherent. She removes the light bulb, puts in a good light bulb, and the lamp is fixed, and the episode ends.
She goes to bed.
The only Morse code that we see in this show is light Morse code. We never see any sound Morse code. But this lamp is telling her that I know why Bill called David. 2200 pool. And so Darby goes and she puts on her pool shooting uniform, her eight pocket pool uniform, her pool gloves that she uses, and she grabs her ivory stick that she uses for all of her pool shooting.
Well, see, I thought this Morse code was the full message. Like, I know why Bill called David. It's $2,200 on a new pool table. Like, I just thought that was it. Like, you got everything you needed to know. But she took that differently.
I would be suspect because $22 for a pool table.
No, it was $2,200. It was $2,200.
Oh,
$2,200.
I would try to talk that person down. $2,200 for a used pool table? No, sir. Maybe $2,100. Oh, mahogany. Is it slate? Is the slate under the felt?
Slate. It's got slate. Yeah, it's red, so it's nice. Newly refelted. Nice leather pockets.
Does it have Bluetooth? Will it connect to Wi-Fi?
No, but it does have one of those like coin things. You got to like push 2 quarters in and then push it in.
Everything connects to Wi-Fi, Tom, so I will not be buying this pool table.
Okay.
How am I going to keep score if the internet doesn't do it for me? The AI doesn't do it for me. This leads to Darby being confused, and instead of going to shoot pool, she goes to the pool house, which is really cold. Oh, because there's a power outage during all of this, which I'm like, okay, show, I got it. The power's out. The power in the house is cool, but the pool's still warm, which makes me think...
Well, wasn't it a hot spring pool? Like, it like transitioned to the outside.
It's natural. You think the warmth is natural. And so you think these guys with all this global warming talk would want that pool to cool down, so they'd just be dumping ice in it constantly. Because if you put ice in the water of the earth, that will cool down the core. Boom. Global warming solved. You heard it here first, folks.
You did it, buddy. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I mean, they did that scene, I think it was in the pilot episode, where they talk about the hot spring and they all go out for a dip, and like it didn't really make any sense thematically, like why are they going in here? But I felt like it was maybe just for this scene. And I know this ends very dramatically with the pool cover going over and she can't get out. It's like she's going to drown. There's some like shadowy figure overlooking her. I'm assuming she could then just swim outside, right? Like, wouldn't the water still connect to the outside hot spring? It's just closed for the interior.
Tom, as someone who watched this not realizing that there was a hot spring, I can only answer your question with I don't know. But now that you've said it out loud, it makes sense. Also, what pool is covered with a cover that is hard enough that you can't push through it? I don't know. This one seems to be some sort of dwarven glass that is impenetrable by both human strength and the strength of a drowning person. This, I'll go on a limb here just by saying drowning seems like the worst way to go. So I did not appreciate this scene. As someone who has occasionally surfed and been rolled up in waves, not a great feeling. So I felt for Darby here, but I know that we're on episode 5 of episode 7. So unless this show is super surprising, which would be wonderful, I think Darby's going to get out of it some way or another. She's going to hack the pool cover. That's essentially what's going to happen.
Do you have thoughts on like the figure that seems to be overlooking her? It doesn't seem like it's somebody dressed all in black, like we've kind of seen this, I guess, murderer be doing. It seems like it's almost somebody wearing like slacks and a white button down. Like it almost seems like a guy, right?
Everything this show has told me is that it's David, because David is the one that has been accused during this episode. The message is, I know she called David, gave him the heads up that she knew something about him calling Bill. And then the message is, I know why Bill called David. Like, who would send that but David if you were trying to get rid of the person that's harassing you? So the suspect I had in my mind was David. But I'm also not opposed to being Lou May because she might be a spy. So, boom.
Could be Zoomer. Like the way she was looking up, it made Zoomer seem taller than he actually appeared since she was underwater. Who knows?
Right, and he shouted, Camelot for all. So that would probably...
I found the crown. I found the crown.
I found the crown. Excalibur. She's the lady in the lake that gives him a sword. And getting swords is no way to govern a people, I've been told. Anyways, listen, I'm enjoying the show. The nitpicks are all for fun. I'm still interested in how this all goes. I actually listened to someone talk about this show, and they made a comment where it's like, it's essentially two shows combined into one. And I'm going to talk about this, and it didn't ruin it for me, but it is kind of interesting. It's like, hey, we took the true crime, like investigation genre, and that's half of the show. And then the other half is an Agatha Christie, global warming's killing us, like murder at the end of the world. Like those two shows, and we just spliced the scenes back and forth. And so, I don't know, the simplistic way of looking at it, but part of me was like, well, what if they just did the Agatha Christie and we went into each one of these characters? Because right now, I don't think my opinion has changed in terms of, based on what they've given us, it's Lee or Andy. Like Lee or Andy are either together, separate, but everyone else here is a side character. And if that's not true, if by episode 7, it's like, once again, it's the cook, like, I'm going to be upset. So, I don't know. Am I wrong?
No, I agree. I mean, I still feel like there's going to be more to the AI. I don't know if it's going to be 100% like the AI is the killer, but maybe Lee or Andy is using the AI in some form or fashion to assist with these murders, because I feel like it's just too prevalent almost in the show.
Sure.
But I'm with you though. I mean, like I know I nitpicked, and I think there are some kind of silly moments throughout, but I'm still very much enjoying the show. I would have wished they tightened this episode up a little bit. I think these are much better told in 45-minute, hour kind of increments. When this one dragged to hour 15, I thought the episode dragged for me.
Yeah. No, it did drag a bit, but we still love it. So, for those of you still listening to us, we appreciate you. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. Tom will talk about the other stuff. If you enjoy listening to us, it is helpful. You can rate and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We will be back for episode 6, which is called Darby Did It. No, Darby Swims to Freedom is what episode 6 is called. It's a kind of bottle episode where Darby just swims for, I'm going to say, an hour and 20 minutes. And
it's kind of harsh because at this point she kind of is trapped in a bottle right now. So
so they shake it and they pop the cork. Darby
episode 6
explodes
is called,
from the pool.
Episode 6 is called Crime Scene. Scene spelled S-E-E-N, not S-C-E-N-E. But yeah, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Team Binge Podcast. We did a quick poll seeing what people thought who was like the more suspicious character. I put Andy versus Lee, and the vast majority of people thought Lee was more suspicious. So I think the audience is kind of picking up what the show is kind of putting down, especially from this last episode. She definitely is high on my radar. So yeah, we'll see where we go. And I don't know. Let's catch a murderer.
Sure. All right, we'll be back for episode 6. The other thing I'd mentioned is reach out to us if you have another show that you're enjoying or is coming up that you would like us to talk about. Tom and I are always looking for what's next as we approach the penultimate. Golly, I never knew what that word meant until I met you, Tom. So
you're welcome.
God bless you. As we approach the penultimate episode and then the finale, we'll be looking for what else is on the radar. Tom and I have some thoughts, which we'll share once we get there. But If you're enjoying something that's not about people finding love on an island or finding love in 90 days and getting married, we'd love to hear from you. I have been Julian.
And I have been Gumshoe Tom. Adios, everybody.